few weeks ago, the hay bales began to slowly shift away from the house. Every morning when I woke up, each one had moved a few hundred feet from its original location. I figured they were just jokers who were bored and paid no attention to it. After a few days, however, the bales began to move closer to the boundaries of the farm. By then I was getting tired of this game and decided to bring them back. It took me a tedious hour to drag all the bales back into place, and by the time I was done, I was ready to punish any varmint who decided to mess with me. The next morning I found all my horses decapitated in a mess. I was awakened by the smell. Each of them was leaned against the wall of their stall. There was no head to be seen. I spent the rest of the day cleaning up and burying the remains. Only when I finished did I notice that all the hay bales were back in their yesterday's places, scattered far across the fields. That evening I sat on the porch of my house with my rifle in my hands and a coffee pot on the table. I sat for hours, peering into the field to see who was hauling my hay bales. Finally I began to peck my nose. I would have, but the moment my eyes began to close, I heard the sound and rustling of trees from the neighboring woods. I leaned forward, my heart pounding frantically with excitement. I was going to catch that bastard. I rubbed my gun and fidgeted in my seat, anxiously waiting for whoever it was to get close enough to ambush me. Only when the creature got close enough that I could make out its silhouette in the darkness did I freeze in place. The creature that had crept into my fields from the nearby forest seemed oblivious to me. It stole across the field, hunched and unhurried, with the gait of a thief tiptoeing. If it weren't for the fact that even in its hunched position it reached more than 10 feet in height, it might have seemed almost frail. The thin arms and legs, the emaciated, sunken chest reminded one of a starving animal. Nevertheless, the creature was undeniably strong, and I watched it easily lift each bale in its arms and carefully lower it some distance away after. Walking only a few steps, I watched him work, shifting each bale thoughtfully. From time to time he would straighten up to survey the position of the other bales in the field, and then he would lightly adjust the one he was working on. Before he left, he looked toward the house. I felt his eyes slide over me in the darkness, but whether he saw me or not, I couldn't tell. Then he silently turned around and crawled in the opposite direction, disappearing into the darkness of the forest. It was an hour before I mustered up the courage to move. After a while I went into the house, but I did not sleep that night. It was not until the sun came up that I ventured out from the porch into the field. The hay bales were lying where he had left them. Strangely, they hadn't traveled as far as they had the previous days. They were approaching something unseen in the field, and looking closer, I realized that they seemed to be marking some kind of line. Indeed, as I walked around the house, I saw that they had formed a clear circle with me in the center. At first I thought the bales had just been haphazardly moved away from the house, but now I realized that they were being moved towards some kind of boundary. The creature was sending me a message. I slept restlessly that night, and only because I was exhausted. The next morning, the bales didn't move at all. In fact, they didn't move at all for the rest of that week. They were finally where the animal needed them to be. I pushed myself to the point of nausea trying to make sense of them. Why would this creature spend so much energy moving my hay bales and threaten me with violence if I tried to interfere? Killing my horses was just a threat, a perfectly reasonable threat. It knew it would scare me, and it knew I would understand the consequences. One morning, the sound of a car driving down the road to my farm gave me a small rush of excitement. I had been planning to leave the farm ever since I saw the creature, but I couldn't hope to leave on foot without risking it treating me the way it had treated my horses. But if I managed to get into the car of the one coming my way, I could get away before it stopped me. I didn't know or care who it was. I thought that as soon as they stopped the car, I would jump in the passenger seat and tell them to get the hell out. But I didn't get that opportunity. The car moved slowly down the road, sliding over the uneven surface. I silently prayed that it would speed up. As we passed between two hay bales set up on either side of the road, a crackling sound came from the woods. Something suddenly jumped out from behind the trees and rushed toward the car on its long, scary limbs. In a few seconds, it was already beside us, pouncing on the car like a predatory cat. Soon it was already destroying the metal frame of the car, trying to reach the driver. The silent man screamed, his cry breaking through the sounds of breaking glass and clanking metal. The screams were only silenced when the creature grabbed his arm. Throwing it away, the creature turned toward me. In the sunlight, I discerned its inhuman essence. It was something horrible and alive, formed into a chaotic semblance of a human form. If it weren't for the subtle crackling sound its materials made, you would have thought it was made of granite. The creature disappeared into the woods, leaving me in shock. My gaze stopped on the car standing between two bales of hay, its engine still hissing. Suddenly, it hit me. The realization was clear. I was a prisoner of this creature, and I was forbidden to leave. Nothing could cross the boundaries it had set. I was captured by an entity that roamed the fields, demanding only my presence. But it was unknown if I could handle being the canary of this entity. I had pondered this much in the past few days, ever since I saw it silence another man by crumpling his chest. If I had crossed the border with bales of hay, it probably would have done the same thing. It would have crushed my skull before I could raise my hands to defend myself. It would have gone in search of a new creature and probably kept looking until it found one that could accept the horrible truth of what it was waiting outside, watching it with its shiny, insect-like eyes. I've been doing a lot of thinking these past few days, and I might just run away from here.